Hello, welcome to Behind the Scene Chats. I'm Amin Karbasi hosting this event. And today we're having our amazing Catherine, one of the PC members of the organizing committee. So why we are doing this? One of the reasons that we wanted to do this was that machine learning community is growing fast. And it's a very different scene from maybe 10 years ago. And many of us do not know what is exactly happening behind the scenes. So we thought maybe we should ask the people who are actually taking action behind the scenes. That's the reason we're having Catherine today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So the first question that I have for you is that how was your flight?
It was good. I have embarrassingly been here for 10 days now, but still feel really tired all of the time. So
Okay, perfect. So your luggage didn't get lost?
my luggage didn't get lost. I was coming most immediately from Zurich, so
I
it was an
see.
easy flight.
Okay. My flight was delayed for a day, so but I made it to our interview, so that's good. So, you know, um, maybe we start with some personal questions, and we want to better understand Catherine. And who is that person who is doing all this amazing stuff? So just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your academic background. How did you end up here?
So I think to some degree I'm not going to say it was random chance entirely, but I think there were a lot of very fortuitous things that happened along the way for my career. So I was, as a teenager, very into computers and computer science and computing. And in part, I have to say, honestly, the most attractive part of it was the fact that adults didn't know what they were doing when it came to computers. And so it was something I could be good at and nobody else knew what was going on, right? And so that was very attractive to young me, right? And then the internet sort of, I think I was probably 12 when I saw the internet for the first time, and it was a purely academic thing, and I was just amazed, and I thought, this is going to be fantastic, and I want to be part of this, right? And I think I had all these ideals about how information could really help people, and I still believe that it can, right? And how information being distributed amongst various parts of the world, particularly like the less well-off parts of the world, would be an incredible balancer or able to improve people's lives in various places. And to some degree, I think it's done that, but to some degree, I also think that power structures are amazingly persistent. So there was that. Okay, so then as a kid, I got really into computer science, and even then it was the beginnings of AI, right? You could be interested in predictions and the predictions that computers were making. Even I think this was even before like Google was founded, right? Mm-hmm. They were doing some really early on versions of this. And then I went to college at a local state college. I went to SUNY Stony Brook, which was also amazing. And from there, I went to Columbia, got a master's degree, and then to the UK and did my PhD. And by that time, machine learning was more of a thing. It was still a very academic, right? But it was, I got my PhD in machine learning in this like 500-person field. And it was big enough for at least people to kind of be aware of it. And we were really small and we were really academic, but it existed. And again, this goes back to the fortunate part in that, like, I just happened to be interested in something that ended up taking off now and becoming like this big thing that I think nobody quite expected in any way whatsoever when we started out.
Good. So I know that you were actually a professor, right?
Yes, that's right. I was a professor. So after getting my PhD, I then postdoced at MIT for a little bit, and then I became faculty at Duke University in the statistics department. And so I did something which was fairly mathematical for a while. I was interested in sort of applied statistical machine learning for a long time. and I was faculty there for almost 7 years, and then I moved to Google, which is where I am now.
Very good, very good. So, what do you say to the little girls and boys who want to grow up and become the PC of ICML? What should they do?
I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting. I think having good fortune or good predictive ability to be like interested, to happen to be interested in the thing that's going to be like the new big sort of area. I think that this area is phenomenal, but actually dissecting. I mean, so right now, nobody really knows exactly what's going on in it, right? And so having the ability to predict, like, where is the thing that's really useful for society and go into that, I think is the best way to actually become the next chair of, not ICML, but the next big thing, right?
Okay. Very good. Very good. So what are the topics or the trends that you're most interested in this year?
So I work in industry, right? So industry is very generative AI focused, right? So I'm really interested, again, going back to the how we can get information to people and from people in various parts of the world and incorporate it into the generative AI technology that we're developing. That's very interesting to me. I also have an interest in, when I was faculty, I worked a lot in our healthcare systems with clinicians in our healthcare system. So I'm also interested in sort of the sort of bridge between Gen AI and healthcare, or just using technology to improve healthcare in general. So that's also a thing.
Very good. So if you have to do one thing in order to correct the perception of people about AI, what would that be?
I think it really is the perception that we really know what's going on, and we're developing these super intelligent sort of like, AI beings or this super intelligent AI technology. I think we're just much more clueless than other people think, and hopefully we'll gain more of a clue over time. But it's a road.
So if you're out there and you're lost, about what is happening, she is one of the program chairs of ICML. If she says that it's not very clear, don't worry. This is probably a consensus among experts. In your opinion, what is the most interesting thing that is happening? You are in industry, right? So you're working in responsible AI at Google, among many other things. So what is the most interesting thing that is happening in industry, in your opinion?
I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think the development of AI technology currently is overall very interesting. It's clear it's going to impact a lot about the way that we live. It's going to hopefully cut down on a lot of the bureaucratic overhead we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And hopefully we find the right way to incorporate this into people's lives so it can be beneficial and not detrimental. I mean, again, this is an aside, but I think this is something that we potentially struggle with, right? If we look at the impact of technology on our society as a whole, figuring out how to make that the best possible, right? And looking at trying to maximize the upsides and minimize the downsides is something that I'm into.
So, the flip side of that question, of course, is what is the most disappointing thing you see in industry, right? You talk about all the interesting things that is happening, and I think it is amazing. But, we also need negative labels, right, in order to have a good classification.
I mean, I think because so much is controlled by industry right now, and because of the industry incentive system, I think right now people are really trying to just sort of find the easiest, fastest way to maybe make money or make a system that other people just start using without necessarily thinking about it as much as I might like. And I think that this really leaves an opening for academia in general, right? Because anybody who can come along, anybody who's potentially not employed in industry particularly, right, and can say, oh, okay, I'm going to think about this, like even a few months out, I think there's a lot to add into the systems that we're developing from thinking a little bit harder about what it is that we're doing.
Okay, very good. So now maybe we can get into the the details of ICML this year. You have been involved, for the last year about how to run this show, right? It's one of the biggest shows in machine learning. It I'm assuming there are a lot of things that you have to go through, a lot of like emails, a lot of complaints. How was the organization this year?
It was good. I mean, it is a really big production, right? So when I have friends inevitably who complain, but you rejected my paper, how could you do that? I probably have never actually seen their paper, right? Like there's a big sort of system of reviewers and ACs and SACs, and I will only see sort of like the few exceptions at the very top, like say that where the ACs wanted to reject the paper, but it got like all 8 reviews or something like that, right? Those are the circumstances in which I can become involved. We had almost 10,000 submissions this year, and it's a production. But aside from the program, right? So there's the putting together of the program, determining what papers are going to be orals or spotlights or posters. But then there's also all of the other stuff that happens around the conference, right? So it's making sure that we have the organizing committee working together to do the workshops and the tutorials, and all of my co-organizers were amazing. And like child care, which I talked to you about before, right? Like making sure that we have sophisticated enough programs for all the kids who are going to attend, and then even just making sure that we can have kids on site and that happens in a reasonable way. That was a thing.
I think that was one of the most amazing decisions that ICML program committee made. That we want the next scientists to see the show, right? So how this is made, and they see their parents who are like actually involved in this kind of an endeavor. Another note that to Catherine's friend is that if your paper got rejected, it's not personal. She may not have seen it even.
I personally rejected all of the papers.
Yeah, okay, friends and family.
No.
So are you involved next year?
I am not involved next year. There's a whole nother program committee, and maybe one year I will come back as like general chair or something like that. But I have now spent my year being program chair, and I'm not even allowed to be program chair anymore. And that I think a lot of people would volunteer to do it again. It's a lot of work, but
yes. So can you actually tell us a little bit about how the program chairs get selected, or the general chair gets selected? What is exactly the process?
So I know the program chairs get selected by the board, right? So ICML is overseen by the IMLS board, and people on the board vote for who the next year's program chairs are going to be. The general chair, I think, is typically a program chair from a previous year.
I see. Okay, very good. So do you have... Go ahead.
I can talk about some of the new things, because aside from childcare, the other new things that are at ICML this year is the position paper track, which is, I think, worth highlighting. So a lot of fields, because their main publication venue is a journal, have like an editorial section, but we, as the machine learning community, have not had this in the past. We just have like our conferences, and so we added the position paper track in with the idea that like this is a place where people can almost write editorials or express opinions about the direction in which the field is going. So that's been really good. Another thing was we introduced an ethics review process, which has existed at some other conferences, but it was the first time that it was at ICML.
Yeah, so that you were pivoting actually to my next question.
Sorry.
No, that's good. You're a very good next token prediction.
Sorry.
No, I was like, what is next in the in the building, like ICML, it has changed, or like new programs. What do you think, the next thing in the space of ICML should be? Like, we have affinity programs, childcare, you talked about the position paper. What do you think is missing and we have to add?
So I also think that more PR and more policy is probably really needed within the field of machine learning or AI, right? Like as the field grows larger and larger, I think interacting with people in government around AI regulation becomes increasingly important in a way that makes sense. And I also think that getting our voices out there and heard is also super important.
Yeah. So, I think, when maybe, when you started, ICML was much smaller, and it was like, 500 people all know each other. And maybe, as academics, we usually don't want to be super exposed, right? So we are very vulnerable to the idea that we are making predictions, we are making theorems, proving theorems, whatever, right? And half of them may not be correct, right? We don't want to be criticized. But I think as ICML has grown, that ship has sailed, and now we are in the arena. So how should we actually interact with the public and the government? And
That's a good question, and some of that has to come from their side as well, to like listen to them and understand what interaction they want, and I think it's best. But we had people who've contacted us from various like governmental and policy places this year who clearly want, understandably, I think, more of a interaction with all of the machine learning and AI conferences, because they want a better understanding of the technology that we're developing. They can't regulate something if it's not possible, right? And so understanding what's possible and what's not possible is really key in them understanding what it is that they can and can't regulate.
Yeah. Another maybe point that has raised by a lot of academics is that, in machine learning community, which is heavily relied on the computing power, what is the role of academia? Where do you see the role of academia here?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I in part like alluded to that before, but like I really think longer term thinking, and right now I think it's really short term on the part of all industrial places, in part because this is so new, right? But longer term thinking, and longer term right now can even just be a few months out, and like understanding what's going on, having better understanding of the models that we use, having better understanding of what the right evaluation metrics are, right? Like all of this, I think people in academia can solidly contribute to, and they can also interact with people with more compute resources and things like that in industry to make it really relevant. So I think it's important that people in academia do have impact in the long run, right? But I think there's a real solid pathway for that.
Right. How much do you hope that we will get to general artificial intelligence?
Oh.
Is this a thing that you think about? It's like, super intelligent entities.
It's definitely a thing that I think about. I think you've happened to interview somebody who is not an AGI person, and
exactly.
I don't really think that like AGI is something that's going to come and take, right? I think it's really important. I think it was Hal Domey actually who had an amazing tweet thread a while ago where he was like, the role of AI in our contributions in AI is really to supplement and not supplant people, right? And so I think we need to look at where AI technology can be useful to people and where it can make us better, right? And not where it replaces us, right? And so I think there's a bit of a different mentality, right? Like I'm very interested in looking at AI and how AI is customizable for different people who want to use it and for different tasks that people want to do, and less concerned about like trying to find the one ring to rule them all.
Right. And at the same time, I'm guessing that if you want to have very powerful machines who can, who are very intelligent, we want them to be super safe, right? How hard it is to make them.
Well, I think there's also a question of what safe means. Yeah. I think right now there's a lot of like, are we seeing bad pictures on the internet, or is it telling us to do something that we know is bad and we're flagging those instances and trying to prune them out in a sense? But safety is far beyond that. And even if you look at sort of our first invited talk that Sumit gave, right? He talked about both safety issues, but then also sort of like the sort of longer term impact on society. And to me, those two things are really mixed in a sense, right? Like it's hard to say that a technology is safe if it's going to lead to really, really bad things down the line, right? Like mental health problems for like all young people growing up. That's a really serious safety issue as far as I'm concerned. And so it really needs to be evaluated with that in mind, but I think we really don't have a good understanding of what all of those are. So right now, most of what we can do is, is this pornography? Is it not? Right, like that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, we see that, but having a better understanding of, again, what safety means, I think will be really key.
So apart from the best papers that we have given to 10, what are the coolest papers that you have seen in this conference, if you have on top of your mind anything?
Oh, there are a ton of cool papers.
From France.
I'm trying to, from France. There are I mean, I almost can't, right? Because this is like now there are 2,600 papers at this conference, and just because I happen to know a paper, probably I just happen to know about it. And,
okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who I am very into work at the intersection of like causality and understanding Gen AI models, and there are a bunch of people who have done work on that to varying degrees, or just looking at sort of, it's almost with regret that I use the word alignment, right? But like aligning with what people want to some degree, and trying to figure out how best to do that. Those are the kinds of things that I'm interested in.
Right. So maybe my final question is, you have worked on classical machine learning. Where is classical machine learning these days?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have there's also almost this like, why is what we're doing right now not classical machine learning, right? Like it's next token prediction in some sense, right? And so time series and next token prediction is something that we have classically worked on a lot over time, and then all of a sudden sort of some new tools came out and really captured the imagination of the public, and that's great. But I think we should realize in contexts like this has been a line of work that we've been engaging in over many, many years. I think trying to figure out how it's best suited, and when our particular generative AI technology that we're focusing on so much right now is the best tool for a particular application area. I think that's yet to be determined, just because it's so new that we've all focused on this.
Right. So what I'm getting into is that, maybe, I don't know, 10 or 20 years ago, it was very difficult to publish papers on neural nets, right?
Yes, that's true.
And now it's pretty hard not to publish
papers on neural nets,
right?
Yeah.
So we want to be in a situation that it, we can also have papers that have nothing to do maybe with neural nets, right? So we want to see papers that are, of that sort, right? So is there any mechanism in the ICML that allows for this diversity?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's, yes. I mean, you can get a set of reviewers for sure that appreciate what you're doing. I think right now, the big change right now has been that we really care about scalability, and we really care about having an impact on society, right? The field has to some degree grown up, right, in that sort of like a lot of the theoretical contributions where it's less clear how they impact society directly are being valued less. And one can argue about whether that's good or not, but we are seeing right now a sort of like high value on impact and scale, right? And so if you have another way of having high impact and scale, that's something that people are going to appreciate immediately. If you have alternative things that may eventually lead to that, right? Like it's probably going to be more like how neural nets was 10 years ago, right? Where you struggle for a while to get that through, but again, things that eventually lead to impact are going to be valued.
Very good. So any final thoughts?
No, you've done a great job. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we loved having you here, and thank you for all the comments, all the answers, and yeah, amazing.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.